Hello, everyone, and welcome to Press One for Happier Customer Service Agents about how WalkMe can improve your contact center. I'm Derek Adams in Product Marketing, and I'm joined today by Andrew Donges in Customer Success Enablement, and we're going to give you the why and the how of WalkMe for improving the service agent experience. So first, let's understand the problem, and why is it so important to keep customer service agents happier? Well, customers today will leave you for a bad service experience faster than ever before. There are so many other choices out there, and your competitors have gotten the memo that customer service is not table stakes anymore. It's a competitive weapon that directly impacts your bottom line. If you can't keep customers from leaving you for your competitors who have better customer service, you cannot succeed. The same is true for agents. It's easier to get a customer service agent job now than it ever has been before. This is increasingly a job that can be done from home, from any time zone, for any product or service. And so ping pong tables and beer socials aren't enough to keep their loyalty anymore. They want to feel enabled to succeed, and they want to be rewarded for their hard work. And if they feel held back by the tools that they're given to do their job from getting those things, they're going to quit. There's no more tolerance for these kinds of obstacles anymore. And when you have a lot of agents quitting, that sets off a chain reaction of business impacts. For example, if you are constantly training new agents and pushing them out into the field, customers are being handled by inexperienced agents who can't always help them. And that's going to drive down your customer satisfaction scores. Also, it's going to raise your onboarding costs, because the more agents that you are onboarding and putting into the field, the more you're paying for agent salaries when they're sitting in training classes and not giving value back to the business yet. It also increases the need for onboarding resources. It also puts more strain on HR to recruit all of these agents. It's just a whole chain reaction of cost. I think we all can identify with the experience of being handled poorly by a customer service agent. I mean, it's really frustrating. I know I get frustrated by it, but here's the thing that you have to remember. It's frustrating for agents too. Nobody wants to do a bad job, especially customer service agents. Nobody wakes up and goes, I hope I really frustrate a bunch of customers today. But because of their tech stack, it's really hard to do a good job. It can take up to 7 different apps to handle a single customer interaction. So that's a lot of reliance on training. It's a huge margin for errors. When agents make errors, that affects the customer experience, and that in turn goes back and affects the agent performance metrics. And when when agents keep leaving, that's really hard on the agents who stay, because agents depend on each other to resolve customer issues. Some of these products or services that they support are complicated, and they have long history of problems that they don't know about when they first start, and they have to learn along the way. And so they depend on each other to ask questions, but that's tough to do when the most experienced agents keep leaving and get replaced by people who are newer than they are. And so customer service agents just want to do a good job like everybody else. They want to resolve customer issues and send customers away happier than when the conversation first started. They want customers to click 5 stars on that feedback survey after the interaction. They want to have happy conversations with their managers when it's performance review time and get praised and recognized for the hard work that they do. But if they feel held back by the tools from being able to do that, if they feel like they can't have those experiences at your company, they will quit. And their quitting directly impacts your brand. The analysts are aware of this. This is a report from Frost & Sullivan about priority for service agents at work, and feeling underappreciated and unrecognized for their work and bad tools and infrastructure, top of the list. And these two things are completely related. If agents have confusing tools and that holds them back from being able to do a good job, that's going to affect their performance metrics. And then they're going to have lower morale and they're going to feel underappreciated. The two things are completely connected. So there's this myth that there's a single contact center app that contact centers use, but really it looks more like this. It's kind of this patchwork quilt of tech, and it's built piece by piece depending on the needs of the business at the time. So usually they'll start with voice and email, and then later on recognize the need for chat, and they'll add an app to do that. And then WhatsApp became a popular channel for customer service, so then that got added in. That's a different app. Social is the new frontier for customer service these days, and that's a whole separate app. And because they're usually short-staffed for service agents, you have some agents who are covering multiple channels at the same time. So they're swiveling back and forth between answering phone calls, answering chats, replying to emails. It's just a manic mess. And then there are all the apps used by the supervisors and managers of these agents, and they don't all talk to each other either. These are used for things like scheduling shifts and measuring agent performance and monitoring interactions that may require escalation. And different managers use different apps, and they have different views of the situation, which can result in some confusing direction from the agent perspective. And then finally, because agents are constantly in contact with each other to try to get these customer issues resolved, there's all the internal communication apps. Email is a different app, chat is another one. Maybe you've got WhatsApp in there, you're doing Zoom calls, phone calls, whatever. Agents will take answers however they'll get them. They don't care, they just want to make the customer happier. So it's easy to see how in this patchwork quilt of apps, it's easy to get confused and just difficult to adopt. And in the midst of all this tech chaos, they're expected to be hitting their KPIs. Here are 3 of the main ones. Resolving issues at the first touch. No customer wants to be transferred to someone else to get their issue resolved. They want it resolved by the first person that they contact. When an agent can't do that, if they're too inexperienced or they don't understand their tools well enough to get that done, they have to transfer that customer to someone else, and that counts against their performance metrics. They're also judged in how fast they can get every interaction completed. The second that phone call or chat or email lands in their queue, the clock starts ticking, and they can hear it in their ears. And every second that goes by raises their average handle time and counts against their performance metrics also. And then the whole point of all this is to keep customers happy. So agents are judged on how customers rate their experience with your brand and also on customer churn. So just a tremendous amount of pressure on these agents. In the contact center world, there's this concept of the cliff of customer dissatisfaction. And that's that point where you get so frustrated with a business that you decide you will never do business with them ever again. And it's usually the result of a string of negative customer service experiences. I think we can all think of a brand where we've fallen off the cliff of customer dissatisfaction. I know I can. It's just a very relatable experience. But the same concept applies to agents. Every minute that an agent is at work for you, they are having a brand experience with you as an employee. And if enough negative experiences stack up, they will fall off that cliff and decide to never spend another minute of their life working for you ever again. And then that sets off the whole chain reaction of business impacts. So as a leader of a customer service department, part of your job has to be keeping agents as far away from the cliff as possible by removing points of friction from the customer service agent experience. And to explain how WalkMe does that, I'm going to hand you over to Andrew.
Thanks, Derek. Hey, everybody. As Derek mentioned, my name's Andrew Donges. I am a customer success enablement manager here at WalkMe. And now that Derek has gone through the problem that we're facing with customer success agent happiness, let's focus on the WalkMe solution. First, let's back up and talk about the basics here. Agents want to be able to provide better service. Nobody wants to start their job or go into work not knowing what the tools are or how to do their job or be fearful that they're not going to perform the way they want to. So first, let's start with the technology enablement. We don't want to have agents struggling to learn new technology and not be able to perform their job or their tasks because they don't know how to use the tools. That trickles into growth opportunities. If they can't use the tools to complete their job, they're not going to be valuable to themselves, their customers, or their peers. So without these different enablements with technology, their growth opportunity is going to be limited as well. In addition to that, if they're struggling to keep up with all the different tasks and the technology used for their job, that's going to take away from their human touch and the ability to really give their customers the experience that they want. Now, let's talk a little bit about the WalkMe solution to agent attrition. It's a tough problem, but we know how to solve it. First, we start by applying some just-in-time content to your contact center apps. putting some shortcuts to other apps that agents will need when they need it. Validate that they're filling out the fields correctly while they're filling them out, and not having to rely on training they took 7 weeks ago that they can't remember. You can put links to relevant knowledge articles in front of them, menus to help through procedures that all agents have to do. And you can even get new agents onboarding checklists that guide them through these processes step by step, instead of sitting them in a classroom and showing them theoretical screenshots. The next thing you'll need to do is apply some automation to your processes so agents have proactive guidance. You can set up an action bot that completes the most common tasks automatically and fills out data from other applications. You can even automatically send agents to the next app they use in a process. Last but certainly not least, make sure you're letting the data guide your decision-making and not just gut instinct. The WalkMe Insights platform makes sure that you use the most up-to-date analytics to justify and validate your results. We're able to gain a new lens on the user experience and the productivity that we can help use to track the agents where they need help the most. This is WalkMe's solution to your agent attrition problem. So our formula for agent satisfaction with WalkMe is data plus action equals experience. We start with the data. We want to make sure that we are targeting the solution before we go in and start building. So with our Insights platform, which I'll show you in a minute, we're able to go through and see exactly where agents are struggling, where they need the most help, and how to be very prescriptive about the solution that we create. Next is action. We take that information that we've gained from our data analysis, and then we put it into action by building just-in-time context and help for users as they go through processes. And then experience, it all equals the experience for the user. So that means they're going through, they're doing what they're supposed to do without any friction points. That helps your agents have a completely smoother experience, as well as your customers. Let's start with the data. As I mentioned, WalkMe's robust Insights data platform allows us to take a look at how your applications are being adopted without ever deploying any WalkMe content. The nature of the WalkMe deployment is we can be deployed via a browser extension or a snippet of code in your underlying application to see things like adoption. How often are people logging into the platform? How much time do they stay there? Are they completing the tasks they're supposed to in the given time period? And we can even track where in the world they're accessing your platform. These kinds of general adoption analytics will allow us to see how long your agents are spending in the platform and where we can make some very basic adjustments. The next layer down is our ability to track specific events and actions in the platform. Visits to URLs, page clicks, button clicks, actual activities through the application, so you can see if they're clicking on the correct buttons, visiting the right URLs, completing the right tasks, to make sure that when we are going in and building content, we're targeting exactly where those friction points are and not just building stuff for the sake of building content. We also have funnels. So those tracked events I just mentioned, we can string them together through an end-to-end process to see from start to finish how your agents are completing tasks and where specifically they need help. Anything from a step in a process that's taking longer than it should, or where a drop-off happens from where they're getting to step 2, but they're not quite getting to step 5. We can see exactly why they're dropping, when they're dropping, and target exactly where to put in some guidance so they can get the help they need right when they need it. And then it all comes together in an adoption project dashboard that we have. So we can see from a very high level, things like application adoption, process completion, user satisfaction through WalkMe surveys and NPS scores, as well as just general WalkMe engagement once content is deployed. You'll notice here, this one's a little red because we haven't done anything yet. We're just analyzing the data to see where to start. Through our thousands of customers and implementations, we realized that the data has to come first in order to build content that is going to be relevant and useful. Now that we've used WalkMe's different insights offerings to identify where we need to support our users, let's put this knowledge into action and start to assist. So I mentioned a couple of elements previously of how WalkMe can assist with this just-in-time help, but here is what it looks like with the WalkMe editor. Again, I mentioned those just-in-time shortcuts through launchers. Smart tips to offer that contextual guidance where the user just has to hover over a smart tip and that information on what to do is going to be right available to them. Resources, So we have links to articles, PDFs, any training resources that you have for your users can be available right there when they're in the application, and they don't have to remember a training that they took 7 weeks ago. And then we have those onboarding checklists as well. The moment they sit down at their desk on their very first day, they'll have step-by-step guidance on how to complete tasks instead of having to sit through a weeks-long onboarding training. Let's talk a little bit about how we build things. WalkMe has a robust library of solutions that are pre-built and ready for you to use based on best practices from the industries and all of our different customers. So you notice here we have Salesforce, but we also have a whole host of different platforms where we have worked with our customers and industry leaders on exact step-by-step guides that are pre-built for you so you don't have to go in and reinvent the wheel. We also have worked closely with partners and our community of customers to build content and have it ready for you so you don't have to spend time reinventing the wheel or doing this from the start. We can help you. And here we have an example of our action bot, continued automation that helps with agent happiness, streamline workflows, and improve data accuracy. All the user has to do is answer some questions around a basic process, and the action bot goes and completes those forms and fills out those elements for them. This improves agent handle time by taking off unnecessary clicks, as well as improving data accuracy. We also have our communication center. We all know that reaching out to people via email for things like updates and company notifications can be hard. We don't want our agents spending their time in their email waiting for an update on something. We want to be able to get in front of them with those updates right in the application that they're using. With the WalkMe Communication Center, we have the ability to create content and send it out to these specific audiences and see exactly who receives it and who acts upon it. Again, we can do it via a pop-up or a push notification, but the great thing about the communication center is we can segment content based on the users and who gets these notifications. It could be by geo, by job description, by application people are using. We have the ability to send notifications or trainings or updates to users right when they're at their desktops. All right, now that we've talked about the data, the action, let's talk a little bit about the actual user experience of WalkMe. So where does all of this stuff live? Yes, it could live in the individual applications where that just-in-time help is. We also have a great tool called the WalkMe Workstation, where the moment a user sits at their computer on their very first day, they have a list of things that they could do, from an onboarding checklist to other resources where they can get the assistance they need. By starting at the workstation, they can search for an application, a process, anything they need to, and they can be taken directly to that process, to that exact page, right automatically from the workstation. You'll notice here on the bottom left, we have an image of a communication center shout out. Again, just in time on their desktop, should they need any last minute updates. And then I don't know if you remember this dashboard from last time, but look, it's green now because we've used the data that we gathered before. We put it into action with WalkMe content, and we've made sure that the user experience has improved with all the different tools that we've put in front of our agents. Again, this is what we're targeting when we go in and do all this work to make sure that we are targeting the right data and the right pain points with increase in application adoption, process completion, and user satisfaction. You work closely with your WalkMe CSM to target these KPIs at the start of the engagement. So the goal is always to make sure these are green all throughout your experience with us. So what does this solution give your business? We've talked a little bit about what the problems are. We've shown you how we navigate them and how we solve them. But what are the end games here that we're targeting? One, reduced agent churn. Derek mentioned it before, but agent attrition is expensive and not fun. So if we can do whatever we can to make sure that your agents stay happy, we've succeeded. Faster time to agent value. Again, with onboarding timelines, we want to make sure that your agents from the very first day they start with you are able to sit down and learn what they're supposed to do without having to sit through weeks-long onboarding meetings and projects. And that all leads to increased customer satisfaction. We've all been employees at companies where we didn't get one of the different pieces that we're talking about here, from training to tools that we needed. And that really does reflect in the product of work that we put out. When we're targeting things like reduced agent churn and faster time to agent value, that is just going to trickle down to the customer because they're getting top-notch experiences from your well-trained agents. What's the solution give your agents? Happier customers, as I mentioned. They have the ability, they're not struggling to work with their tools or understand what they're supposed to do. They're focused on the customer and the human experience that they're giving folks. Happier managers. If you've been a leader, you know that when your employees aren't happy, you're not happy. So our goal is, of course, to make sure your agents are getting their jobs done effectively and happily, but that you're on our top of mind too, to make sure that you have happy employees. And then that'll lead to a happier work life. I think we've all realized these past couple of years, going to work and not being happy is not going to happen anymore. So we want to make sure that we're able to supply whatever we can to make sure that we can afford a happier work life for you and your agents. But who wants to hear about a bunch of hypotheticals? Let's talk a little bit about customer stories. We have two that we've highlighted that are particularly relevant. We've had a top airline who had a challenge because they were moving from one itinerary management system to another during COVID, which I don't know if you've done any traveling or you thought about it or you've canceled travels during COVID, but that's a high volume customer service center. And they decided to change their itinerary platform during all of that. So the solution that we proposed to them were smart tips and automation for service agents. Again, those smart tips are those hover over just-in-time contextual pieces of guidance, as well as those automations, because we're in the middle of a high call volume, uncomfortable time for everybody, including the agents. We don't need to pull them off the phones and away from the computers to go train on a new process. We had to keep them talking to customers, so we were able to deploy that context to them without having to take them off the phones and into a training room. The result was increased ROI, decreased handle time, and improved CSAT scores. Again, I don't know if you've been on the phone with a customer service agent at an airline or our next story about a hotel. Sometimes they can seem very flustered, and rightfully so. Who wants to call and cancel a flight they've been planning for 2 years? So if we were able to improve a CSAT score through our work on their platform, that's a win. Next, as I mentioned, a global hotel chain. Similar use case. They needed to respond quickly to COVID. People were canceling. People were making adjustments. So solution was an in-app CRM help tool that would help the agents with their platform and what they were supposed to do when these calls came about something they're completely not trained on. And again, the goal was to not pull them off the phones and into a training classroom. They had to show these agents what to do just in time. Again, similar results, increased agent satisfaction. If you can, I mean, that is impressive in itself. We were able to increase agent satisfaction when those call volumes were through the roof. Improved ROI, and again, an improved CSAT score, which is very impressive. So the key takeaway from all this, avoid that cliff of dissatisfaction. Derek mentioned it, I'll mention it again. We've all unfortunately come too close to the edge of that cliff, if not fallen off before. So we want to make sure we're doing whatever we can, both from a customer perspective and from an agent perspective, to avoid that cliff. So what we've discussed here today is how to provide in-app guidance to reduce the reliance on training. As I mentioned before, these agents are high call volume, high activity folks. We want to make sure we're training them in the moment and not taking them off the phones. Automate repetitive tasks. This is a high volume, high paced business and job function. We want to help them automate any of it and reduce some of the clicks to really improve that handle time. And then, of course, last but not least, or first, as I mentioned, is analyzing the data. Before we do anything, we want to make sure that we're targeting the correct issues and friction points for your users so we can make informed decisions about what happens next. If you like our session, then we'd recommend the breakout in the next session on automation featuring Kendra from Sun Life. And then tomorrow, we have a DAP Pro Roundtable featuring Let Data Lead the Way to Success. As you know, we talked about data quite a bit today, so that next session of that breakout is going to be very important. Thank you again for joining us here today. We really appreciate it.